invites God's presence to enter our lives and God's will to prevail in our lives. Prayer on Shabbat may not necessarily bring water to a droughted field, nor mend a broken bridge, nor rebuild a ruined city. But it can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, strengthen a weakened will. We're going to begin with a nigun, a wordless melody to get us in the Shabbat spirit.
Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai.
Once again, around the world, the Jewish community has convened to celebrate the Sabbath. And it's time for us to do a little tohu v'racha, some good and blessing, find out what's happening with each other. So we're going to begin with anniversaries this week. Samson and Casey Flansbaum are celebrating their anniversary, as are Mark and Sarah Muniz. They actually renewed their vows just a short while ago. And Richard and Hilda Golden, Dr. Richard Golden at UMT and his awesome wife Hilda, they're celebrating their anniversary also. We also have a couple of birthdays that happened this past week, Shirley Elfont and Leanne Hiles, Toby Rotman, Emmanuel Gittins, and Terry Messing, one of the people who helped hire me to come here, are celebrating birthdays. So that's wonderful. So who else has some tohu v'racha, some good and blessing to share with us? Yes.
So first, a thank you for the folks that helped, but for everybody else, everything that was damaged and had to be moved out from the classrooms, Wednesday night, a group got back together and spent about 3.5 hours. So Onegi Hall is just about ready to be used at whatever point we deem it to be used, but it is empty, and we Marie Kondoed the heck out of the religious school stuff.
Right. Yes, there were some painful moments, but it was all necessary. So, that's, I get it. All right. Who else has good and blessing to share? Anybody? Anybody? No? Okay, not one. Who else? Yes, TJ.
We rescued a turtle from our pool.
Oh, good for you.
I took it back to their creek, to the park, to the creek.
Right? No.
And it was no easy feat.
It was what?
No easy feat.
No easy feat, right?
Catching a swimming turtle. They're bad.
They are much more problematic. I've dealt with turtles walking across the road, and those are much easier to catch. But yeah, having to go into the pool, that was above and beyond. Very nice, very nice. So, of course, the Jewish virtue of protecting animal life and showing dignity to animals. Wonderful, wonderful value you fulfilled this week. Who else has something good to report? Anybody? All right. Well, there are a number of things I could focus on, but most important of all, I found a new supply of Hello Pandas. All right. The little chocolate balls, right? So now they're sold at Costco. So we'll have, among our selection of choices this week, we will have Hello Pandas. So what could be better than that? All right. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start with the kindling of Shabbat lights on page 120. And it's my privilege to invite up Helena Shapp-Dawsey to kindle those lights.
by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offering of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. Baruch Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehanlikner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the lights of Shabbat.
Yashikoach, my dear. All right, we are going to enter into our Shabbat warm-up, the warm embrace of Shabbat, by turning to page 132, and we're going to start out with Psalm 97. If you look at the third paragraph in Hebrew, at the very bottom of the page, Or Zuruach Letzadik, light is sown for the righteous. We're going to be singing that in Hebrew, and then we'll go on to the English. Page 133. Adonai is sovereign. Let the earth exult and the many islands rejoice. Dense clouds are around God. Righteousness and justice are the base of God's throne together. O you who love Adonai, hate evil. God guards the lives of God's loyal ones, saving them from the hand of the wicked. Light is sown for the righteous, radiance for the upright. O you righteous, rejoice in Adonai and acclaim God's holy name. We continue now with Psalm 98, a psalm. Sing to Adonai a new song, for God has worked wonders. God's right hand, God's holy arm, has won God victory. Adonai has manifested God's victory, has displayed God's triumph in the sight of the nations. God was mindful and steadfast in love and faithfulness towards the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth beheld the victory of our God. Together, raise a shout to Adonai, all the earth. Break into joyous praise of song. We're going to go on now to sing Lecha Dodi on page 138. And as is our custom, we're going to be doing stanzas 1, 2, 5, and 9. And I can't help to think that I need to call on Mark and Isaac to be the gatekeepers of the door as we welcome the Sabbath in. So you just watch Mark. He'll give you your cues. It'll come at the very last stanza. All right? So off we go with Lecha Dodi.
Lecha Dodi likad
Here because we live in an age of miracles and wonders, and unseen by you, and especially by you, the people on the camera, is our new camera, right? This camera, it pans back and forth and it turns in any direction in order to see. It's omnipotent, right? It reminds me of Ezekiel's chariot, where it describes a wheel that is covered with eyes, right? That sees and goes to and fro. It's angelic. It's great. All right. So with that excitement out of the way, we're going to turn now to page 144 for our Hatzi Kaddish, and we'll be rising for Baruch Hu in just a moment. Amen.
וחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב במהרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה במהרו אמן.
Teach me, O God, a blessing, a prayer on the mystery of a withered leaf, on ripened fruit so fair, on the freedom to see and to sense and to breathe, to know, to hope, and to despair. Teach my lips a blessing, a hymn of praise, as each morning and night you renew your days, lest my days be today as the one before, lest routine set my way. We rise now, if able, for the Baruch Hu.
Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
I invite you now to join me in the Ma'ariv in English on page 148. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, and thoughtfully alters the time and changes the season, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Ever-loving God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim. We continue now with Ahavat Olam. Everlasting love, you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praised are you, Adonai, who loves your people, Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. We continue now with the Shema.
Shabbat
Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Please be seated as we continue with the Via Hafta on page 154.
הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבביך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידך וחיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Page 156. Emet ve'emunah kol zot v'kayam aleinu ki hu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ein zulato ve'nachnu Yisrael amo. All this we hold to be true and trustworthy for us. You alone are our God, and we are Israel, your people. You are our sovereign and Savior, who delivers us from the oppressor's hands and saves us from tyrants' fists. You do wonders without number, marvels beyond count. You give us life and steady our footsteps. You perform miracles for us before Pharaoh, signs and wonders in the land of the Egyptians. And you led your people Israel out from their midst to freedom for all time. When your children witnessed your dominance, they praised your name in gratitude, and they accepted your sovereignty. Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang a song to you together, lifting their voices joyously. The Micha Mocha. And now for ourselves, we pray this evening, page 161. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai haforetz sakot shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim. So we're going to now honor Shabbat. Turning to page 162 with Vishamru, V'nei Israel, the people of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, observing it through all the ages, for it is a covenant for eternity.
Vishamru, V'nei Israel. Israel, Odi le'olam, Vishamru b'nei Israel, et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת, לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
We should pray as if everything depended on God and act as if everything depended on ourselves. Please rise if you're able for tefillah, beginning on page 164. We're going to be on the even-numbered pages for a while. Adonai sefatai tikahu fi yadi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, 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 Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, El HaGadol, HaGibor, HaNorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei HaKol, V'zocher HaSteot B'imot, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו ואהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רק מושיע. מקרקר חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. צומק נופלים ורופא עולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות, ומי גומר מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים לכל יום יחדו תעשה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. Please be seated. We continue on the bottom of page 172. Our God and God of our ancestors, be pleased with our rest. Sanctify us with your mitzvot and grant us a share of your Torah. Satisfy us with your goodness and gladden us with your salvation. Purify our hearts to serve you in truth. In your gracious love, Adonai our God, grant as our heritage your holy Shabbat, that Israel, who sanctifies your name, may rest upon it. Praised are you, Adonai, who sanctifies Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha-Shabbat. We turn now to page 175. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayers, wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands. You are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otecha levadka ni'ra na'avod. And you are with us in our prayer, and our love and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and to do your will. You are the still, clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There will we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai she'otecha levadcha be'ira na'avod. We conclude this part of our service now by going to page 178. We're going to be singing Shalom Rav, and then we're going to take a few moments for our own silent prayer and meditation.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atah hu melech gadol lechol hashalom. Israel. Shalom bimroma, uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru b'meru amen. Yase shalom, yase shalom, yase aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael.
It was while Robin and I were living in Israel in 1991 that the Madrid conference happened, the first attempt at peace between Israel and the Palestinian Liberation Organization. And we got to watch it on television in Israel, and it was a very fraught affair. It was very formal. The Israelis really didn't want to be talking directly with the Palestinians, and the Palestinians had all kinds of demands that the Israelis were not going to make a pre-decision about, and it was interesting to watch, and it had its excitement. But what followed after that was, of course, about 2 years of almost constant negotiation. And it's long been known that what happened from that point on in 1993, the Oslo Accord, actually was the product not of what we saw, but what we didn't see. A series of informal back-channel meetings. And as it turns out, HBO has put out a movie about this. And so I got to watch it this past week. And it was quite interesting. And it was really the effort of a very, very small group of Norwegian diplomats trying to make this all happen. And it was intriguing to watch how people who are hardened enemies, people who bore so many wounds and so many frustrations, were able to gradually, painfully come together and at least arrive at a declaration of principles about what they wanted to achieve. And if this show is to believe, the absolute key to all peacemaking is whiskey and waffles. It is clear from this movie that whiskeys and waffles takes each stage into the next thing. And so now we know what's most important in order to make it. You need a little whiskey, a lot of whiskey to lubricate people and get them to relax. And then you need waffles so they can find something to agree upon. Watch the movie. You'll see what's going on. And it's apropos because big conflict is what our Torah portion is about this week. Our Torah portion, Korach, is about the most serious rebellion against the authority of Moses and Aaron that happens during the 40 years. Like so many insurrections, the issues that are brought forward are actually multifold, overlapping, but you can still sort of distinguish there are different things going on. There was that of Korach, the Levite, a cousin of Moses. His issue was that Moses, according to his claim, had taken too much upon himself in terms of religious authority over the children of Israel, a position which in Korach's view was incompatible with the status of the people as all of us being a holy people. Moses, however, interprets this differently, and he sees Korach's complaint as one that is about himself, that Korach is dissatisfied with his position, already an august chieftain of the Levites, but still desiring the priesthood for himself. Now, the second line of rebellion was led by a couple of guys, Datan and Aviram. I always remember Datan being played by Edward G. Robinson. You take too much upon yourself. I can't do the accent. You take too much upon yourself, Moses. But in any case, Datan and Aviram seem to have a different issue, even though they're co-conspirators. Their complaint is not specified in the Torah, but it appears to be a challenge to Moses' political power. Now, the Torah tells us that these two men were of the tribe of Reuben. And if you think back, you realize that Reuben is Jacob's firstborn son. As such, I could easily see in a tribal society that they would have thought they should have more authority than the other tribes, certainly more than the tribe of Levi, rather than what was assigned to them, which was no special status at all. Whatever the complaints actually were, the one thing is clear. The rebels were united over one objective, their objection to Moses and Aaron in leadership. But in their dissatisfaction, they were not alone. Again and again in the course of their wanderings, and especially in the book of Numbers, the children of Israel are waging arguments against Moses and Aaron. They blame them for having taken them out of Egypt in the first place, and they blame them for the discomfort of nomadic existence. In last week's Torah portion, the children of Israel even went so far as to call for a new leader to take them back to Egypt, because for some reason they were nostalgic for the leadership of Pharaoh and the sedentary, if enslaved, life that they had enjoyed there. Korach, Natan, and Aviram and their followers were expressing the resentment of what was no doubt many people when they rebelled against Moses. This insurrection, on the other hand, stirs God to extreme anger, and as it has on multiple occasions, and it's always up to Moses and Aaron to finding themselves having to dissuade God from exacting some punishment upon the children of Israel, and they do it despite the criticism that is made against them personally. As if to compound Korach's lies, the rabbis who composed the Midrash offer the argument that in additional complaint to that, they invented another issue that's going on, which is that Korach is arguing over tzitzit, which is described in the previous Torah portion. And the rabbis wrote that he argued with Moses about how the commandment should be put into action. And effectively they say, look at what Korach is accusing Moses of is making up commandments himself to suit his own purposes rather than truly listening to God's instructions. Korach's sin, however, may not be that he stands out on his own to challenge the authority of Moses. We admire people who are dissenters. Rather, it is that he is instead riding what may be a populist wave to power, exploiting the dissatisfaction among people for his own gain. So ultimately, whatever the issues were, his accusations and those of the people end up undermining God's purpose and plan. They're aiming to undo what is effectively progress, the progress of their very redemption and all that they have gained with the freedom they got coming out of Egypt. Our rabbis are not disapproving of controversy in and of itself. In fact, they believe in it. What they were against was controversy that was aimed only at the assertion of one human's will over another, and in the guise of trying to help all people. In none of the accusations which Korach make does he appeal at any point to a search for a higher purpose or trying to better explore what it is that God intends. Instead, he is rebelling against Moses and Aaron, the people. Korach and his followers want to take power for themselves, whether it be religious power or political power. And that is the background to a well-known passage in the Mishnah, in Pirkei Avot, the sayings of the fathers. And this quote goes like this: every controversy that is for the sake of heaven is justified. That phrase is b'shem hashamayim, for the sake of heaven. Every controversy that is not for the sake of heaven, lo b'shem hashamayim, cannot be justified. The passage then goes on to call, as an example, Korach's rebellion, a cause that was not for the sake of heaven. It was just about the claim of power, of grabbing at power, whilst the arguments that rabbis engage in, as the way Judaism should be practiced, typified by the arguments between Hillel and Shammai, which are famous, are seen as b'shem hashamayim, done for the sake of heaven, to better understand the Torah and to better apply it, genuine attempts at doing the right thing. Moses aimed to lead the people in the way of God's purposes rather than to bend them to his will, or even to bend himself to make their desires come true, is the thing that is vilified by Korach and his followers, and in both the Torah and Midrashim, this is what is recognized. This week in Israel has been very, very important time, and you can witness, if you've been following what's going on, that there has been one argument, b'shem hashamayim, going on, and there have been two arguments, lo b'shem hashamayim. What is for the sake of heaven? The attempt to bring together a coalition of people willing to create a government. Israel has been paralyzed for the past 2 years by conflict and basically a frozen government. And they've had election after election. And it's always the case that half of the community seems to be on one side and half on the other, and nobody has the capacity to make a government in the parliamentary fashion that Israel is designed to do. However, in this past week, an amazing coalition, unbelievable, from the furthest left to the furthest right, have come together, along with an Islamist party of Arab voters. And together, 8 parties have constructed a coalition, which it looks like on Sunday will be sworn into office. And this, I think, is for the sake of heaven. Okay, they have one thing that they all agree on, is they don't want Bibi Netanyahu to be prime minister anymore. That's the one thing they agree on. But they were able to talk their way through all their other disagreements to the point. Maybe there was waffles involved, I'm not sure, but they got there. They got there. And admittedly, this government feels very frail. It could topple easily, but it is the broadest representation of the Israeli people ever to happen. So I think that's a good thing. On the other hand, there have been 2 acts lo b'shem hashamayim. This week, at the same time that all this was going on, the Women of the Wall, a group of religious women gathering at the Western Wall, again, as they've been doing now for years, gathered and attempted to worship there according to egalitarian principles, wearing talit, reading from the Torah, and again, they were attacked. In this particular case, their The box containing all of their prayer books were seized by their opponents, who then tore them to pieces. Understand what just happened. A Jewish prayer book, multiple Jewish prayer books, were desecrated by Jews, right, in the name of some abstract value of keeping women from doing certain things. That, lo b'shem hashemayim, that is not an argument for the sake of heaven. That is a shaming of heaven, an embarrassment of heaven. The second one, the second incident, is in the effort to prevent this new coalition government from coming together, the two religious parties, the parties representing the very right extreme of Orthodox Judaism, came out with the most loathsome accusations against the coalition partners. They attacked them as if they were going to destroy the Jewish people, as if they were going to destroy Judaism if this were allowed to happen. When in fact we know that the reason they are so upset is that they are not part of that coalition, and therefore they do not have access to the Israeli budget that has sustained their institutions in the past. In perhaps the most shameful of the things said, one rabbi said that Naftali Bennett, not my favorite person, not a man I admire, but clearly a religious Jew, he said that man needs to take off his kippah. He is not a religious Jew. That is a shameful attack upon a fellow Jew who does exactly the same practice as the people that they do. And Naftali Bennett is on his way to become the first actual Orthodox Jew to be a prime minister of Israel. And even if I don't like his politics, you know what? The coalition's going to prevent him from doing anything he doesn't want, anything he wants to do. I think it's actually a pretty extraordinary thing that a overtly religious Jew is going to be prime minister. So these are two shameful arguments. Look, our portion teaches us that Jewish leaders cannot trust only in their own interest, in being God's interest, or even perhaps in the will of their particular constituents to make their decisions. It's their responsibility to apply Jewish principles in the decisions and leaderships they offer, and it is incumbent upon them to be thinking of all the Jewish people, not just their Jewish people. They must not seek controversy simply to bolster their own power, but instead to make the case for either, whether it be the principles of our faith or our shared Jewish democratic values. In our Haftarah portion this Shabbat, the prophet Samuel reminds the people, after they got their way, what was their way? They wanted a king appointed, even though God was opposed to that idea. They wanted that, but Samuel said, that's fine. God is willing to place a king, King Saul, over you, but you must not defer to the king rather than aim to follow God. And similarly, the king's power is exercised justly only when he too has the people and God in his mind with his decisions. No leadership is effective if it forgets the principles that it is meant to be leading. And so as we enter into this new week, I hope it's a hopeful week. I think good things are happening. Sworn enemies have come together and they've been able to work things out. And this, I think, is promising. How long it will last? Who knows? It's Israel. But it's kind of exciting. And I think what we need to do is maybe, as a new foreign aid campaign, send as much whiskey and waffles to the Israelis as possible so that they might continue to have that kind of goodwill and that sworn enemies can sit down together and actually talk and act on behalf of our people, the Jewish people. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. All right, it's time for our announcements, and it's my privilege to invite up Michelle Jim, our outgoing Vice President of Fundraising, to share announcements with us. Come on up, Michelle.
CKA is hosting another blood drive this Sunday, June 13th, from noon until 4 p.m. And they do ask you that you sign up ahead of time to reserve a slot. We hope that you have a chance to join us and help out with this great community support event. We also have an annual member meeting coming up. Don't forget that will be this Monday, June 14th at 7 p.m. here at the show. All CKA members are welcome. The meeting will cover the election of new officers and directors, approval of the 2021-2022 fiscal year budget, and any other business raised by the meeting or the members. A Taste of Judaism. You are invited to join us for 3 free classes exploring a modern Jewish take on spirituality, values, and community. Our classes are dynamic and interactive. Our teacher is accessible, engaging, and virtually impossible to offend. If you have friends or family that would like to attend, we are holding 2 program sessions. Each session is made up of 3 meetings. One occurrence will happen on June and one in July. You can get all the details on our website and sign up for the program there. As always, you can find all the details for everything that I just went over on our website as well. We would like to offer a Mishavera for those in need of healing. May the one who blessed our ancestors also bless Harry, Anthony, Natalie, Bobino, Karen Buxbaum, Nick Cohen, Maxine Collins, Sandy Cook, Dave Cook, Jerry Dietz, Jeanette Burrow, Pat Ducar, Gordon Ellison, Brenda Irwin, Tammy Ferris, Debbie Freet, Michelle Griffith, James Hart, Ken Hishman, Jody Huffman, Deb Kaufman, Lauren Konak, Alex Konak, Sandy Lesnar, Karen Moore, Long Neff, Violet Neff, Hebert Pauli, Paul Redwood, Sandy Garber Rubin, Adrienne Sandler, and Myra Sushel.
Ask also if there's anybody here who wants to.
Is there anybody that wants to add somebody to the Mishavera list?
Sue Berger, Howard, Tom Holliday, Marion Kaplan, Mike Nelson, Mike Warner, Carrot Jefferson, Shirley Hayden, and Earl Patrick.
Megan Pitcock.
And one more week for Robin. Love you, Dennis.
Francesca.
Mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
All right. Before we go on to the Alima, I do want to acknowledge that there are 2 ways to understand the proximity of our blood drive to our annual meeting. One way to perceive this is that we're asking you to do an act of tzedakah, a little righteousness before we all come together, and so that we can enter into this meeting and to the project of the future year with a sense of justification and righteousness. On the other hand, you could interpret this as meaning that we're just trying to weaken you and drain your strength so that it's not so strongly contested on Monday. Either way, it's a great idea to give blood. So I'm looking at all these particularly young and healthy Jews around the room, and I'm thinking, you could sign up Sunday and give blood. It would be a great mitzvah, right? And then you should come to the meeting, and we'll give you things, Nutter Butters or something to keep you going. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to turn to page 586. And I invite you, if you're able to please rise for the Alenu.
Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, velo samanu k'mishtakot ha'adama, shelo sam chelpinu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'chol ba'olam. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נותן שמיים ויוצר הארץ, ומשב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת עוזו, וגויין מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אינו, אמת מלכנו וחסותו, ככתוב בתורתו, ודעת היום, אותה אל כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, על שמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ ועל הארץ ניתן אלוהים. Page 591, please be seated. V'nema v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo We turn our thoughts now to those who've departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people who dwell in unmarked graves, and those of every race and every nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We have no one listed for Shiva this week here at the office at Congregation Kol Ami. Is there anybody who's lost a loved one in the last week? I'm going to add the name Rebecca Egoff. Is there anybody observing Shloshim, anyone who's lost a loved one in the last month? Here at our congregation, we honor these yard sites that occur this week. Iva Crawford, Ann Crone, Dr. Eric Fisher, Jamie Grumman, Jean Harvey, Jeanette Kowarski, Lorraine Lee, Tova Lewin, Louis Mintz, Joseph Delbert Roseberry, and Raymond Schapp. Is there anyone else observing a yard site? Lynn Murphy.
Thank you. We honor the memory of all these people, and we think of them with appreciation, as well as those who mourn for them. We turn to page 598, and I invite you one more time, if able, please rise for the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chaye chon u'vyom echon, u'v'chaye d'chol beit Israel, b'galal v'zman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam v'ameh almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudsha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata Tushbachata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shlama rabba mim shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Please be seated, everyone, as we memorialize those who mourn and offer our support to those who grieve. And we're going to close out with a song, Lo Yisagoy El Goy Cherev. All right, you can fight with words, but beat your swords into plowshares and your spears into pruning hook. Page 645 at the bottom of the page. Lo Yisagoy El Goy Cherev from Isaiah.
Lo Yisagoy El Goy Cherev, Lo Yisadu Milchama, Lo Yisagoy El Goy Cherev, Lo Yifetu Od Milchama, Lo Yisagoy El Goy Cherev, Lo Yifetu Od Milchama, Lo Yisagoy El Goy Cherev, Lo Yifetu Od Milchama, Yisagoy El Goy Cherev, Lo Yifetu Od Milchama, Lo Yisagoy El Goy Cherev, Lo Yifetu Od Milchama.
At your third session of leadership, you're done now. You're totally prepared for this. I could turn this over Kiddush to you, and if you'd lead us in Kiddush, I'll do the motzi.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzah banu b'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon v'chilanu zikaron l'maaseh b'reishit ki hu yom tehillah l'mikarei kodesh zecher letzion Mitzrayim ki banu b'chata v'otanu kidashta mikol ha'alim v'shabbat kodshecha v'ahava uvratzon Hichaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
L'chaim! All right. And before we say our blessing, I just want to thank you for taking on the sacred task, as well as to remind you that our sacred eye, our celestial gimbal over there really has the all-seeing eye of Bob behind it. And he is making all this happen as he always does. So, ladies and gentlemen, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen.
There we go.
Thank you.